Okay, we're rolling.
Cool.
Hello, Insiders. Well, I am extremely happy today. I am with my oldest and one of my dearest friends, Kyle Whalum. And the reason we're together today is because Kyle is here in Brisbane on tour. He is the bass player for Katy Perry, and so they're on a world tour, and so they're here in Brisbane. He's here for that reason, but that's just scratching the surface on who this guy is, and we're going to get into all kinds of things: friendship, music, creativity, fatherhood, ultra running, which is a big part of what makes Kyle who he is. Because here, as we know, as we talk about all the time on the Inside Job, everything is spiritual. And so that absolutely speaks to everything that I know about this guy, everything I've experienced from him, and so excited to have my dear friend Kyle Whalum on the podcast. So Kyle, welcome. You are officially an insider.
Nice, nice. It's good to be on the inside. You know what I'm saying?
It is good to be on the inside. It's nice and cozy and warm in your hotel room.
Yeah.
Man, I've got a question for you. Just as we get started, do you happen to remember? Do you know how we met? We've been friends for a long time.
We've been friends
for, I've counted up 20
over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Yeah.
I vaguely remember something about, like, I know it was tied into the CCM, the Christian music scene in the States, in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I think I remember something about, like, were you working in a studio? Were you engineering at
I'd only been in town for about a year, and I had found this elusive gig. I had no idea how coveted this gig was, but I was working at Forks Drum Closet.
At Forks, yeah.
And
that place has moved, by the way.
Yes, I knew it had. I haven't been to the new shop, but this place is just over. You drown in percussion instruments when you walk into that place. But Brent Barkus.
Oh, Brent, yeah.
He walked in one day, and I didn't know him, but we started chatting, and he said, "Oh man, I've got this." I told him what I was doing. I was trying to start working in Nashville as a drummer. And for whatever reason, I don't know why he would have done this to me, but it was just it just happened. But he said, "I've got this. I'm working with this band, this little trio, and I need a drummer, and I need somebody to put a band together. Do you MD?" And as a good Nashville musician would always do, I lied.
Yeah, he said, I certainly do.
Of course, indeed. Yes, indeed. Of course I can put a band together. I've done it a million times.
I still do that.
So I think I went home and did whatever version of Googling put a band together means, and MD means, so musical director. And so, not through him, but through somebody else, somebody said, "Man, do you know Kyle Whalum?" And I was like, "I don't know Kyle Whalum. Who's that?" They said, and this meant something back then. They said, "Oh man, he can play like Victor Wooten," which now today,
which is no longer true,
and is the worst qualification for a gig of all time. But that meant something to me back then, and so I said, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" And so they gave me your number. I called you, and you had just wrapped up your gig with Stacy.
Yeah.
You just come back in town, and you said, "Oh man, this is a
with Stacey Orico."
Stacey Orico.
Yeah, yep.
You'd been over a world tour with her, I think, and you'd just gotten back. And so anyway, 21 years ago, we start gallivanting the countryside with this trio called Carried Away.
Yeah.
And that's one of the gigs that you do when no one's looking. The overnight success that took years in development.
Well, it's like paying your dues.
You're paying your dues, and we paid a lot of dues.
Paid a lot of dues.
Paid a lot of dues. Me, you, and Jason Fitz.
Oh my gosh.
And so I've had the privilege of 21 years of knowing you. We haven't seen each other in at least a decade now, living in two different continents.
Yeah.
But I've had the privilege of getting to know you, and what an amazing, beautiful human being you are.
And likewise.
Well, thank you.
Or else I wouldn't be sitting here.
Sure. And so, but my listeners, they probably wouldn't know unless they just happen to be privy to you on Instagram or something. So, man, I would, as we say on this podcast, man, stories are sacred, and we really, really believe that stories are sacred. So, I want to hear what your story is like. Where does Kyle Whalum come from? I mean, I meet you when you're 21 years ago. You're 20 years old, and finding your way into the music industry. So, I want to hear your story, man. Who is Kyle Whalum? What crazy concoction produces a world-class bass player, an amazing dad, an ultra runner, all the stuff that we're going to get into. Where do you come from, man? Tell us your story.
Yeah, that's something I'm, very obviously still figuring out.
Yeah.
That's like one of our big projects in life is like, who am I? And it's funny. I actually was asked recently, and hopefully, maybe around the time this comes out, or soon after, this is like a finalized thing. But I got asked recently to put together a TED Talk for TEDx.
Oh, wow.
And obviously very humbled by that, and like, why? Wow, why would you want me to do that? And part of the ask is like, you kind of have to, in a way, you have to kind of boil your life down and figure out like one idea to present to TED. And so I actually only started that process like a week or two ago. And short answer to your question is like, I don't know who I am. I'm figuring that out. But it was insightful to kind of like, I'm actually using AI to help me organize my life, and so I can take a look at it and see what are like some through lines. I'm not even nearly done with that part of the process, but I just started, and so who am I? I am like all of us. I'm a spiritual being on a human journey. Is like sort of the ornamented way to say that.
Yeah.
The simple way to say is just like, I'm a dad. I'm a musician. I am a very curious person. That curiosity has like brought me to some incredibly high places, and it's brought me to some kind of dark places, as we've talked about, privately.
Of course, yeah.
And so in the course of my life, I've lived a lot of life. Like I moved to Nashville at a young age from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
My dad is a musician. I got into music. Never wanted anything to do with music before about the age of 12. But when we moved to Nashville, because it was like what my parents did,
Sure.
like you don't want to do your dad's job.
That's right.
Like, ew, And out of desperation, when we moved to Nashville, I didn't know anyone, and I kind of started picking up guitar. I got into Jimi Hendrix and wanted to be a drummer, but we lived in a tiny little apartment that was too loud, so I got into guitar. And then I found the bass guitar because that was sort of in between. It was like the closest guitar instrument to the drums.
Right.
Yep. So
percussive.
Yeah, percussive,
rhythmic.
and you get to kind of be a team with the drummer and
course.
a partnership,
Yeah.
And so fell into playing bass guitar, and I quickly got on this path. Like bass, it's sort of like the South Park sketch where one of the black characters, like, they're trying to get him to play bass in the band, and he's like, "But I don't play bass." And they're like, "Yeah, you do." And he goes up to the attic and he has a bass, and all of a sudden he's just good.
He's just great. It's a P bass.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it felt for me. Like, a bass was one of those like cosmic moments of like, I'm supposed to play this instrument.
Wow.
Because I don't remember struggling to learn it at all.
Wow.
I have no memory of like, and I'm sure I did, but it came very quickly and fairly easily. So I went to college in Nashville, Tennessee, met a girl that would become my wife years later, and kind of did all these, dues paying kind of gigs like we talked about. And then at a certain point, I kind of got some of my first like professional opportunities in Christian music.
Yeah.
So Nicole C. Mullen gave me my first job. I was 17, I think.
With Dee Dee Holt on the drums.
Dee Dee Holt. I got a quick education in the road and like players and cats and what that world is like, because it was a Christian tour, but there were some real cats in that band, and so there's things kind of happening, and soon after that era, like maybe within the next 3 or 4 years, is when I was with Stacey Orico and met you.
Yes. With the great Lamar Carter.
Lamar Carter, who's still killing it. I've been fortunate enough since then to go on and play for all kinds of artists, in country and pop, like quick names, LeAnn Rimes and Kelly Clarkson and Megan Trainor and Miley Cyrus and Katy.
Yeah.
And did I say Kelly Clarkson?
You did.
I did. Okay.
You can say it again.
Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah.
No, and Kelly ended up being one of those people. You know, in your life, you have all this time where you're preparing,
Yeah.
and dreaming, and then you have one little vertical.
Yeah.
And Kelly was that for me.
That spike.
Yeah, she brought me into the next world up.
Yep.
Of, you know, all of a sudden I'm not having to share a hotel room with anybody and can pay for more than
Yes.
just my life. Maybe I can pay for you know a kid and my wife and and then Katy came through Kelly. We shared some crew on the last tour that I did with Kelly, and they got me this job with Katy. In the middle of all that, I have always been, like I said, a very curious guy, and so, you know, I've had ups and downs that we'll probably get into with substances, with various little addictions and things of that nature. But I've also, on the other hand, been very curious spiritually, which is why I was excited to do this podcast. You know, I was raised Christian and sort of started feeling around somewhere in my early 20s. I got into the Beatles and
You're a huge Beatles fan.
Yeah, well, because I was a latecomer.
Yeah.
I grew up with like Luther Vandross and soul music.
Because your dad.
My dad is a jazz musician.
Yeah.
And a really acclaimed jazz musician. And so I didn't grow up with people are like, man, you don't like the Eagles? I'm like,
I never heard
I just
the Eagles.
didn't grow up with the Eagles, bro. I'm sorry.
I'm
you know?
the same.
You know,
I'm
I can
the
tell you
exact
about
same.
Diana Ross and this and that.
Yes.
So the Beatles was like a wave of like a revolutionary thing for me in college. Always had loved rock music, but more like Green Day and 311 and stuff when I was a kid. And so the Beatles was like a real education in rock history. And since then, you know, rock is kind of what I'm known for now, kind of. But
the funkiest rock bass player.
Yeah, and I love it all.
Time, man.
Yeah, I love jazz, and I just love good music. You know,
You were the first bass player I ever heard use a big muff. pedal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know if you still use that, but man,
You're gonna hear the show tonight. It's a digital version now, but
that's amazing.
It's on practically every song.
I remember the first, because we were in a band. We did it. We were in a trio together, and I remember the first time you stepped on that thing, and I was like, it blew my socks off, man.
Yeah,
it blew me against the wall. That it opened up fuzz, like distortion
It's
bass.
borderline too much. That's what's cool about it.
That's what's cool about it.
Which is actually kind of sums me up. Nicely. So yeah, but yeah, I started kind of looking around spiritually somewhere about 20 years ago, and it's brought me to some really wonderful places, and out of a lot of, I've been spared a lot more suffering than I probably was barking up, because of that curiosity.
Yeah, God's been kind to me in similar ways.
Yeah, we have our tracks, like we talked the other night, we have a
Absolutely.
very parallel kind of.
Well, we both grew up in youth group bubble land, and for our parents wanting to keep us probably tame and subdued, as much as you can subdue a couple of ADHD kids.
Exactly.
ADHD kids who want to go crazy and rebel against everything. Yeah. But we were probably both really good youth group kids. I feel like you've always been ahead of the curve for me. I remember sitting on planes with you, and I'm reading stories about how like Genesis is like literal science, and you're reading Wired magazine and Popular Science, and you're reading stories about space, and you're going, man, check out this nebula, check out this stuff, and you were right there on the billions of years, and I was struggling with that at the time.
Were you a 10,000 year guy at the time?
Oh, brother, try 6,000.
We can cut that in half.
And so it's interesting because I love everything I learn in science and quantum theory and all that stuff. My journey to breaking free of some of those things, ways of reading, actually came through really deeper biblical scholarship and going, that's actually not what those stories were ever about.
We're ever saying, yeah.
Whereas I felt like you were always, man, quite a few steps ahead of me, and always, man, your curiosity led the way for me in a lot of things to go, no, we should be exploring. We should be expanding our thought. We should be expanding our consciousness. We should be venturing out into the unknown and going, I've come to find this this saying to be so freeing in my journey, which is, if it's true, it's God's truth. There's not like Christian truth and then science truth. If you find something that's true in science, well, that's just true.
Right.
And so if you find out that the universe is X whatever, you go, well, that's true, which means it's God's truth, which means I need to keep updating and keep expanding and keep growing the way I'm thinking about things. And I always found your pressing into that, the unknown, so encouraging and so inspiring for me in my journey. But I wonder where that got started for you. What was it as a youth group kid kind of moving out of that into your young adulthood? What was it that began to pique your curiosity and your spirituality beyond that kind of limited container?
Man, I think maybe, somewhere in that like Beatles, Sly and the Family Stone era, where it was like, I was obsessed with hippies. Like,
yeah, wow.
What a cool time where people were really trying to do this. They brought a lot of Eastern influence into America, and were trying to think in a much wider view. And I think when I looked at my life up until that point, again, I was only 20-something, but I thought about, the preaching of hell and the spankings from my dad handed down to him from his dad, handed down to him from, I thought about those aspects, and I just like had a instinct that I don't think this is the way that we're meant to download God's love. Like, I just, in other words, like, I don't think that these punitive aspects of faith systems, which if you scale them up over history have included things like pillaging and war and slavery and all the really, really horrible
colonization,
right?
All controlled power games.
Yeah, a microcosm of that is like, well, I got to spank you because you did wrong, or your love is a little less boundless than mine. You happen to love men, or you happen to love men and women, and so you have to go perish in eternity. Which
for eternity,
which I'm not a mathematicien or a physicist.
Yeah,
but infinity is an awfully long time.
It sure is.
It defies time, and so
to
say that someone messed up once and is going to so quickly, hell and
that didn't compute with your notion of what love is.
Not at all. I think, and there was a dissonance there, like that. I think a lot of us feel like that just can't be true.
Surely
it's the same
God's
thing.
Kinder than I am. I couldn't do that to somebody.
Bingo. So things like that began to creep up quickly. And, it's like the Matrix. You take this pill, and once you have had those thoughts, and you realize that you can't rightfully argue for them any longer, there's really no turning back. Like we talked about Rob Bell, a guy that I respect a lot, that you've been fortunate enough to have discussions with on this pod. Where, in the early 2000s, he, coming out of Christianity and hearing about someone like Rob Bell, you're thinking like, oh, this is like one of the most dangerous people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then coming, like, learning more, basically becoming more educated, years later, coming to realize, like, this guy was so ahead of his time in Western culture.
And he's so ahead of his time in a certain tribe, but he's also deeply connected with the root of where everything started.
Yeah.
He's actually returning to, I love something that he would say, that the word radical, he goes, yes, my thoughts are radical, because radical in the Latin means returning to the root.
Wow, yeah.
A root vegetable, a radish, a radical, the radical thing.
Interesting.
So he goes, I'm actually going deeper into the tradition. You think I'm exiting from the tradition, but I'm actually going deeper into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
And I'm happy to say that, like, my dad and I have been on this journey together for
That's so cool.
Not together, but at the same time,
concurrent, for
the last 20 or more years. And so, like, hearing his journey, he's a confirmed Catholic now, which I think,
really?
I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't. Sure.
But he needs deeply to be a Christian.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
That's not all he is, but at his deepest core, he is a Christian, and I admire him for holding to that.
Yeah.
But seeking a deeper truth within Christianity and with respect to like all different faith systems. And so my dad and I have talks a lot like ours where we talk about quantum mechanics, and we talk about string theory, we talk about meditation, and we talk about mysticism. He's very, very, we're both really intrigued by mysticism, as you said, radical, returning to the root. And we were talking the other night about how a lot of these mystical aspects of our faith systems have been pruned off. And low key, those are kind of the most ancient and most precious ones, because it's pre-perversion.
Yeah.
Over time, we know that a lot of our faith systems are completely upside down. When I say perverted, I mean literally.
Yeah.
And so, like going back to the roots of some of this stuff, and when you get to the root of most of these religions, practically every one, the core like principles are pretty universal and also true.
Yeah.
Like, the further down you get, the less you're able to refute any of it, because it actually stands the test of time. And that's, to me, that's how you know that the original message more than likely was transmitted from the source, God, universe, to a human being.
Man, being a part of the Aboriginal First Nations faith community that I was a part of, you begin to just hear these stories, these wisdom stories, these ceremony stories, these rituals that have been a part of their communities for tens of thousands of years, and you go, it's the same story.
Yeah,
it's the same story.
Yeah,
and it's got its own language, and it's set in it inside of its cultural moment in time,
which is important.
Which is so is the Hebrew story that's set in its cultural moment in time. So is the New Testament set in its cultural. And there's stuff that's outdated, and you go, we have to figure out a new way to deal with that. But it's like, how do I connect with that sense of wonder, that sense of awe, that sense of being, that ground of being we talked about the other day, in this cultural moment, in this time. And man, I just think I love the way that you go about that. And you've always been such an inspiration for me to keep pressing the limits and keep going. No, you can peel back the curtain. You can peel back the curtain. I think you hipped me to Donald Miller. All and,
who was a little bit of in the CCM early 2000s mold, was a bit of an agitator to traditional Christianity, which I loved about Donald Miller. I didn't realize what it was about his books that I connected with,
but it resonates.
But it was that he was kind of pissing off Christians a little bit.
Yeah.
But for righteous reasons.
For good reasons.
For good reasons. Not to be an agitator.
Not to be cynical, but to go almost in a prophetic way, to go, the system that's holding this together is actually quite fragile.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story about a guy who was listening, like somebody turned him on to the Robcast, and he listened to one episode, or maybe he listened to something, a book or whatever it was. He listened to one thing from Rob, and he said, I've been a Christian for 60 years, and that one podcast unraveled my whole. And I go, if that's all it takes, it's pretty weak.
It's pretty fragile.
It's pretty fragile.
Absolutely.
And so, a robust spiritual life that actually is thoughtful. And I find you to be a very, very thoughtful spiritual seeker and practicer as well, which makes me wonder, man, you're out here on the road, you're out here touring with Katy. That's a world. I know a fraction. A tiny bit. But man, most of our listeners have no idea what a day in the life of a bass player who's touring across the world you're at the top of the game. Most people don't know what that's like, but I know it's not all cotton candy. We know that. Yeah. There's suffering, there's struggle, there's wrestling with all that stuff. How do you maintain your ground? Well, what does a day in the life look like? What does a week in the life look like in that? Just for people's curiosity, because they'd love to know. But also, how do you maintain your ground of connection, your ground of being?
Oh man, that is really the challenge out here.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge that I aspire to.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, I'm excited about facing the challenge every day of trying to stay a good guy out here, and trying to stay, and deeper than a good guy is trying to stay true to myself and true to my values, and So for me, there's very simple components. I love simplicity in science, in nature, in religion. And for me, there's like just a few basic tenets that I have to, those are my main priorities each day. And one is connection, family, friends. If I have a close friend in the vicinity of where I am, it's very important to me to connect with that person. You're that person on this trip. You know, I have a dear friend named Kyle Steed back in the States that we were able to connect with in Dallas. He's a wonderful artist, by the way, visual artist. But we grew up together. And
amazing.
These meetups with very close friends and sometimes like, you know, family are super, super soul healing out here. The road can be a dark place if you allow darkness to kind of pull your day. And so when I wake up, it's important to me that I quickly try to connect with my family, maybe, you know, maybe a FaceTime or something.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about so your family is what? Back home? You got wife and...
I have a wife and 3 kids, and they're 8, 6, and 1.
Amazing.
2 girls, 1 boy. And they're back in L.A. They're actually in Nashville right now on a little family trip.
Nice.
But when I wake up, I'll try to connect with them, probably selfishly because it feels good and helps me start out with a bit of positivity for my day.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's I try to meditate every day. And that's not a long meditation. It's about 20 minutes. And then I'm gung-ho about the next few hours is just exercise. And that's a big part of my approach to life is movement and stillness and connection. Those 3 things.
Stillness, movement, connection.
Yeah.
Speak into each one of those.
Yeah. So
what is it about stillness?
Stillness for guys like you and me that I am confirmed like triple diagnosis ADHD, but I'm pretty sure if you started knocking on that door, they'd be happy to hand you your diagnosis.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I just know I know that type of brain when I see it.
Yeah.
You've always
Sparky
had.
mind.
Yeah, we have a lot going on, and we're in ways brilliant, and in other ways troubled.
Yes.
You know, it's a lot of weight to carry around. But
my buddy James calls it Sparky brain.
Sparky brain, I love
Sparky
it.
brain.
I love it. And now I've totally forgotten where I was.
And you just sparked off.
Yeah, sparked off.
So stillness.
Oh yeah, stillness. Yeah. So, because our brains are like this.
Yeah.
Stillness is like a practice that is really sacred to me because it's so unnatural feeling for us. It actually turns out it is very natural.
Very.
We get still when we burn out or when we've said too much and we're embarrassed, or when we
haven't taken care of ourselves.
When we're hungover because we partied too much, or we're in shame. We're still. So now I just try to seek that stillness purposefully with intention every day. Not much. 20 minutes, like a little goes a long way. I do 2 meditations a day most days, each 20 minutes. I'll do one in the morning and one in the evening. And that comes from the transcendental meditation way of approach. So they do shorter meditations twice a day, most days.
Now, for somebody who doesn't know TM specifically, walk us through what the movements in that are, or lack of movements.
Yeah. TM is a very simple mantra-based meditation.
Okay. Instead
of saying the mantra out loud or like some other styles, you say it internally in your head. It dates. I don't know the actual date. It hails from India, from an ancient like Vedic tradition, like over 6,000 years old.
Yep.
And from what I understand, there's different types of these mantra-based meditations.
Yeah.
There's another one that I think Westerners call Vedic meditation. There's probably a better actual name for it in India.
Sure.
But so it's very simple. The reason it appeals to me is because it's probably the least structured and simplest approach to meditation. And I think it's the easiest for beginners from the ones that I've tried.
Brilliant.
Especially, we all can only speak from our own experience.
Yeah.
But for my type of brain, TM is the first one that like clicked and I fell into instead of having to wrestle with.
Yeah.
And I emerged 20 minutes later and I felt like I had taken a Xanax in a good way.
Amazing.
I literally felt like I was not high, very, very present, but I just, all of my momentary troubles that had accumulated through the day just fell off. And I had at least a few hours of that feeling.
Wow.
And that's, I think, why they recommend another one in the evening.
Wow. Thomas Keating talks about, Father Thomas Keating, I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
He kind of developed one that for the Christian tradition, he just called it centering prayer. And the idea, if it's similar, is you have the single word or the single phrase that just, sometimes it's like, for me, a blank, wide open canvas of emptiness, of nothingness, just is an invitation for your mind to go insane. Whereas to have that singular phrase, you just bring it, and as soon as you begin to wander, you just bring it right back to that phrase.
Yeah.
Following your breath. Similar kind of vibe.
That's it.
That's it.
I think most meditations,
It's not hard. It's not simple. It's just all simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah.
I feel this one is easy. It's easy. It's easy for me, but it is simple at the same time.
I love that,
which I enjoy.
So that's stillness. And you said what the next one was? Connection.
Well, connection was the first one,
Yeah.
and then my meditation, so stillness, and then exercise, so movement.
Yes, movement.
Yeah,
right.
So Phil mentioned that I'm an avid runner, and I have been for, I think, 16 years now. It could be 17. I'm just not going to do the math right now. But running was presented to me earlier in my life by my dad, who was like an avid jogger in like the late 90s. And,
oh, wow.
You know, like the short shorts era.
Totally.
And I just thought it was so lame, just like his, jazz music and stuff. When I was a 11-year-old, and he got me one morning. He pulled me up. I think he had noticed that I was like getting a little husky, as we used to say back in the 90s. And
Hilarious.
I think today we know a little bit better about like body image.
Of course.
Maybe he would have left it alone today.
Sure.
But back then he was just like, hey, you should come jogging with me,
Yeah. That's a kind way to do it.
It is, and I appreciated like
gentle.
he was trying to hand me a tool, much like Katy did with Katy was the one that introduced me to the TM.
Oh, wow.
people.
Yeah, sure.
He handed me a tool. Which is the most incredible gift you can give someone is a tool.
Absolutely.
It's better than any Xbox or
what
or toy or whatever, because you can carry it with you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So he handed me this tool of running as a moving prayer, as a way to maintain your actual physical body, which we downplay a lot in spiritual circles.
Unfortunately,
they're connected.
Unfortunately, deeply.
They couldn't be more connected. Your spirit and your body. So.
You are a body. We get
Right.
taught you're a spirit that has a body, and it's like, no, you are a body.
Yeah.
It's part of who you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so, running over the next, I kind of stuck with it. That initial, I hated him for it when he first got me out the door. It was like 6 a.m, and I had to go to 8th grade that day.
I have such a hard time with it.
But he asked me to softly commit for like 2 weeks, and I did. And by the end of the 2 weeks, not only was I going twice as far, without throwing up this time, I had started to go do the run on my own without his having to shepherd me into it. I ended up letting it go, and in college, it would come back and forth.
Yeah, I don't remember you running when we were hanging out. I remember it being something. Do you remember that commercial that we used to laugh at?
Oh, yeah.
Where the guy runs into the... Do you treat running addiction?
Yeah.
Why, no, indeed.
Why, no, indeed. It was those anti-smoking commercials.
Anti-smoking. But we laughed at the idea of a running addiction. We thought that was hilarious. So you weren't running then, and I don't know...
I dabbled. Every now I would basically like become displeased with my physical appearance, and I would get into running for like 3 months and like trim up a little bit.
Yeah.
But and this all kind of comes together, and this is part of what I'm working on for the TED Talk.
Yeah.
Is when I was in my mid-20s, I was in the height of early party Kyle, you know, and I was at throwing a party at our little apartment or house.
Is this on Caldwell?
Yeah, on Caldwell.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd like knocked my cigarettes off of this little like balcony that we were sitting on the porch, and I had done this before, just being silly, and I was like, I'll do this little party stunt where I like jump down off the porch. It's about 8 feet off the ground, and I'll grab my stuff, and then I'll run around through the back of the house and pop out through the front door again, like. here I am, you know. So I got everybody's attention. I'm gonna do this like I'm a golden god thing from Almost Famous. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
No.
Character
Ages
jumps
ago.
off
Ages
the roof.
ago.
So I do this like leap of faith, and horribly shatter my right ankle.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember this.
And
I don't think I was there that night, but I remember.
You weren't there, but your spirit was there. But yeah, I basically I broke my ankle badly. And before that, you're right. I'd been mostly sedentary, chain smoking cigarettes, just
Getting bases stolen.
just wild. I was just wild, and undiagnosed ADHD. Sure. I didn't know that, but I was just out there just doing.
And young
stuff.
20s, just finding our way.
Yeah, I was having fun. I don't have any regrets because all of this stuff led to where I am today.
Yeah.
And so ended up having to go to the hospital. I got 12 screws and 2 plates in my right ankle. And for the next, the first 3 months I was in like a wheelchair with a cast on, and then I was in on crutches with a cast, and then I was on crutches with a boot, and then I was hobbling around on a boot. And this whole thing took about a year to where I could sort of walk with no boot on my foot, and I was like had a horrible limp, which I actually low-key still have kind of a little limp from that incident. Right. But it was that year I spent just sitting on my butt and being a 24 or 25-year-old and having taken my whole physique for granted for my whole life. Yeah. When we all know there's people that don't have a certain limb or have been in a wheelchair from an early age or just got in a wheelchair, but they'll never get out of it. And so that all kind of hit me somewhere in there, like God, universe started speaking to me about just what I had been sitting on and not realizing. Like,
wow.
So I swore, I was like, when I get out of this boot, I'm going to get back into running and I'm never going to stop. I'm going to run like every day. And, 16, 17 years later, or actually 20 years, 17 years-ish, after that incident, that's basically been true. I've pretty much run every day. Very, very rare exception that I don't. Yeah. And it's led me to, I've run half marathons and full marathons. Then I got into ultra marathoning. Because
this is because
if a little bit is good, then more has got to be better. Right?
If you are an Enneagram 7, which it sounds like we've talked about that the other day. That you just did your test. If that's the case, then yeah. Well, if that's the case, being stuck in a boot in a wheelchair, man, the 7's greatest fear is being trapped. And having their options limited. Yeah. And you go, that is hell on earth. It's having myself limited to that degree. Yeah. And then to find something going, well, I'm not just going to do a little bit. If I'm going to run, I'm running 100 miles.
Yeah. And so at this point, I've run I think it's over 25 ultra marathons, including 600-mile races. And hoping to do a 7.
What did you even call that?
Well, 6, comma, 100-mile foot races. Yeah,
I understand.
They have races up to 3,000 miles. There's one called the Sri Chinmoy Transcendence Run that's run over a month, and you're trying to hit like 3,000 something miles. So these people are running almost 100 miles a day.
And if you don't die, you will find transcendence.
Yeah,
and if you do, you will find transcendence.
Some of that can get into over the bell curve of usefulness when you get into like a salvation by works kind of. Yeah. So to each their own. I personally, there is a sweet spot with all that stuff, and I'm learning that sweet spot as I've aged. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I actually told my wife, I called her sobbing at mile like 95 of a 100-mile race, goodness. And it had not gone well, and I didn't know why I was out there anymore, and and these are in the wilderness, so I'm literally out in the wilderness in the desert, just like, babe, I don't know why I'm doing this. I've been trying to quit for the last 60 miles and they won't let me, and now I'm so close now I'm going to finish, but I'm going to take some years off. Yeah. And so I told her, that was 3 years ago, I told her I would leave some room to let the kids get older, for me to reanalyze my relationship with running. And I still run every day. Yeah. And that's the cool thing, is like running is just like fishing. Wow. You can go do these daring deep sea adventures, or you can just go sit in a pond.
Throw a line in the water. Yeah.
And so these days I throw a line in the water, and I mostly run 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes 2 hours, but I just keep it a little more centered, and I've gotten more into strength training as I've aged. So movement is half running, and now I'm in the gym with our drummer Tony, who's like looks like the Incredible Hulk.
He does look like the Incredible Hulk.
And it's great because
he's like Lester. Lester looks like the Incredible Hulk.
Mini Lester.
Something about drummers. Not this one. Not this one.
So yeah, that's I mean, as far as like the TED Talk and me thinking about my life, the AI asked me for 3 life-changing moments to kind of help, and so those were some of them. My dad waking me up early to go on that initial first run, that experience at the party, losing my mobility and getting into running, and then the last one being the most current one. I've been on a 13-year journey with sobriety that we've talked about recently. And so it was about 13 years ago that I had reached a cliff with alcohol and drugs. And during that time, things got really bad, and I decided to get help. My family was able to help me. We had a friend that knew a rehab facility. I went to treatment for a month, and then I was sober for about a year and a half. And during that time, I went to AA, and I want to give them the credit where credit is due for helping me change my mind. Because the illness with addiction is in here, and in here. It's not the things, it's you. Why can't we be with ourselves? Why do I need to put on this armor to go out socially or to think that women would like me or whatever it is?
Of course, yeah.
And so they started me on that path. I decided to see if I could still drink like a normal person, which is common. And not only that, it is borderline recommended. It depends on your situation, but my sponsor at the time, I said, I think it's been a year and a half, and I was like, I feel like I can drink more moderately, and he's like, man, go try it, like let me know how it goes. And I thought he was being tongue in cheek, but I think he was being literal, like, let me know how it goes, like if you can drink socially, and it's a cool thing to be able to have, if it's important enough to you, and if you if you aren't wired to kind of fall deeper into that habit. Some people can float right on the surface of it, and it's a wonderful addition to their life. For me, I just don't do, if something makes me feel good, I'm going to do it every day. Every single day. Right? And so I have to find alternate things that make me feel good. And then I have to start looking at, why do I need to feel so good all the time? And that's what I'm working on now.
Beautiful.
But a long way of saying that in the last 2 years, I decided, after being a meditator for a few years, I finally got into a zone where I felt alcohol kind of just fell off. I just decided one day that I was done. And it's been over 2 years now. And this has been one of the latter, more defining encounters in my life. And so out here, another part of my sanity is staying sober.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and for me, sobriety is alcohol primarily. There's other things that you can do and that people do that were never really a struggle for me, or it was sort of take it or leave it. So I don't necessarily rule those things out. But I'm certainly, alcohol is the one that was a daily struggle that I don't engage in anymore.
To circle back to the Enneagram, this is interesting. I know you haven't done deep dives on it, but each number has got what they call the passion of the type, which is the kind of the heart state of suffering that makes that's unique to that type, what makes them suffer, and kind of things that they avoid. But anyway, each one also has a virtue, and as that type does their inner work, it's almost like the cherry at the end, or the carrot at the end that says, man, you've done your spiritual work, and because of that, this virtue arises within you. And for the 7, the virtue's sobriety.
Wow.
And so because so much, I think, and you can speak to whether this is your experience or not, but so much of the reason that whether you're a 7 or whatever, the part of the human condition is man, we're from infancy, we are taught to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and the sevens just know how to do it. The passion of the seven, the suffering of the seven, is gluttony.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I can't get enough.
More.
And the thing that the avoidance pattern of that seven is pain.
Yeah.
They say because and movement and continuing to plan the next thing and I'll do this for a while and then I'll get bored of it and I'll go to the next thing. Oftentimes the seven will do that because they're worried if I stick here too long, something painful is going to come up, and I'm not going to know how to deal with that, and I'll get trapped in the pain.
Yeah.
So
but even sitting still for guys like me is painful. I remember some of my earliest struggles are not being able to sleep as a very young child, like 3 or 4, and boredom.
Yeah.
Traumatic, like boredom feels traumatic. Kid Cudi talks about this. He's done a wonderful TED Talk about his mental health, and boredom. He's another ADHD guy.
Wow.
Boredom is painful.
Yeah.
So meditation is me trying to learn to sit still and actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
Running was trying to learn how to experience discomfort and enjoy it for the most part. Type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, no, that's that. So the transformative journey, because self-awareness is important, but awareness itself isn't sufficient for transformation. The transformative journey for every type is to sit with that passion and to sit with that suffering, allow it to see its usefulness, to not limit it, to not distract yourself from it, to not suppress it, to not over-medicate it, and say yes to the suffering. I welcome whatever's here. I welcome whatever is here. As a teacher, what is it here to teach me? There's something here for me, even if it's painful. And it's the fruit of being with that pain that allows that virtue to arise, which is sobriety for you.
Isn't that funny, man?
Beautiful.
Transcendence that's maybe why I was drawn to transcendental meditation, is because there's something on the other side of this thing that you're afraid of.
Yes.
There almost categorically always is. And so for me with alcohol, like being afraid of being myself, like I'm not good enough on my own. Alcohol helps me be the Superman, you know? On the other side of that, I can find myself like being afraid of physical pain. I remember being terribly afraid of needles and doctors as a child. After becoming a runner, I decided to get blood. You know, for years I gave blood every month because I hated needles, and it's two birds, one stone. It's helpful in certainly just to have the blood to donate, but it was helping me. You know, and sobriety, meditation, all these things are things that I was like terribly afraid of. Even this TED Talk or considering writing a book or any of these things, you know, are things that terrified me. And so, but on the other side of them is you know, I think we were talking at dinner. I think a lot about the meaning of life. Everyone does, and that's like one of my obsessions. I think the meaning of life. What's that?
42.
Yeah, 42. Hitchhiker's Guide. I think the meaning of life, I have a hunch that maybe it changes. Maybe it's not just one meaning of life. Maybe it's the meaning of life for you in this season, at this age, during this time in history. So, but what I'm settling on right now is that like the meaning of life for me right now is, if you had to boil it down, I would just say growth, because we were talking about, I think, consciousness is here to become more conscious. And so the big consciousness has been sent into little packets of consciousness called us. And we are sent to become more conscious so that big consciousness can watch us become more conscious. Big consciousness can be conscious of us becoming more conscious.
Unbelievable.
And a way to sum that up in, I think, one word is just growth. So part of our job on Earth is just to continue to grow. We've all seen people in middle age or older that have seemed to stifle or arrest at some point in their life, and that is probably the saddest thing. We all know that feeling of seeing someone that has been stuck for a long time.
Or feel like they peaked a long time ago. Yeah.
Right. Or in denial about either of those things.
That's right.
And it's okay to peak early. And like, we love Wes Anderson movies.
Oh,
They're
my
all
gosh.
about a fallen,
That's true.
someone that was
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
You know, and the movie is filmed when they're not that great anymore.
Yes.
But they find some hope somewhere in there, you know. But like,
Yeah.
there's a way to even do that and grow. In fact, that can be part of your growth more
Absolutely.
often than not. So,
Yeah.
I forget how we even got on that, but yeah, all of this stuff is just for the sake of growth, and I think it's beautiful, man. It's really beautiful to see it in other people like you, to see it in myself,
Absolutely.
to see it certainly in my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I imagine that the greater consciousness, some people call God, some people call a universe, feels the same way watching us
Absolutely.
go through it. It's got to be tremendously fulfilling.
Absolutely.
So,
And Richard Rohr, as we talked about, you
Yeah.
said your dad's has become a big Rohr guy.
Richard, if you're listening to this, please, he's still alive?
He's hanging in. He's hanging in there.
Richard, please reach out to Kirk Whalum and sign something for him. He will take it to his grave. Sorry, I keep cutting you
He
off.
could probably go out to Albuquerque and see him.
Oh, nice. Okay.
He talks about he's quoting the psychologist and sociologist and anthropologist Ken Wilber when he does so, and philosopher Ken Wilber. And if you don't know Ken Wilber's work on consciousness, bro, like that, I would send you that direction. He does spiral dynamics. He's phenomenal.
Oh, okay.
But Rohr, quoting Wilber, he talks about transcend and include. A lot of us want to transcend, or we want to leave something. We want to go to the next plane, but we want to leave something behind. We go, I want to. It's like no.
I'm not that guy anymore.
I'm not that guy anymore. I'm gonna cut that part of my life off. And it's like no. All the darkness, all the pain, all the suffering. You find a way to include it. You find where does it fit? How does it inform me? How has it taught me? And I carry it with me. I don't necessarily. I can be healed from the pain. I can be healed of the open woundedness of it. But it informs me. Even fundamentalist past, the whatever we grew up in, we go, it had a place and it had a purpose, and I can love my friends that are still there. I can love the people that people are where they are, and you love them, and you go, I transcend that because I continue to expand and grow beyond that, but not at the exclusion of anybody. I'm not excluding that part of myself. I'm not excluding other people in my life. I'm transcending, but I'm also bringing them along with me.
Absolutely,
in my
man.
heart.
Wow, man, Richard is beautiful. You're beautiful. I love hearing you, all your knowledge, man. Like, you've just put in so much work, like learning.
You
it's
too,
beautiful
brother.
to see. I was gonna say that, like, one of the things that is probably our heaviest task as we grow is to not let the ego's temptation to take all of this growth and use it as a podium
Another
to
thing.
stand apart from other people.
That's
right?
exactly right. That's exactly right.
I'm you're into Rohr, and right now I'm into Eckhart Tolle.
Yes.
Tolle,
Yes.
and he talks about how he was talking about the ego, and he was saying how like a guy that gives away all of his possessions and becomes some sort of monk and walks around in complete withoutness. Oftentimes the ego, if there was a way of measuring ego, this guy most certainly feels a lot better about himself. He kind of feels a lot more comparable to like a multi-billionaire.
Yeah.
And he was saying like the ego in this chaste, pure,
It will
pious
find
guy.
anything to grab onto.
Yeah, it will find anything. And so I have to
Absolutely.
make sure as I'm out there to not...
Wow.
When the crew is all going out to get drinks or going to this club or that club, I have to make sure I'm really intentional about sitting firmly right in the sweet spot of like maybe I'll go tonight or some nights I won't go, but it's not because I'm judging you.
Yes.
If I do or don't go, it's only because the moment is speaking to me.
Yeah.
But I love you guys, and I actually vicariously am thrilled when I see the younger people in the crew going to turn up, and I'll give them little hangover care tips and stuff. And,
You're like, I've been there.
I've been there, man. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. That's so beautiful, man. It's such a joy it's a joy to know you. It's a joy to reconnect, and we've texted back and forth over the last several years to kind of reconnect. But to be able to sit down with you, have dinner the other night, and sit down with you today, and have you on the podcast, man, you're such a you are such a gift. Now, there's a difference between, man, anybody that follows you on Instagram or whatever, your gifts are on display. The gift that you bring to the world that God has placed inside of you of creativity and of brilliance musically is and even running is on display. But there's a difference between you having a gift and you being a gift. And my brother, you are a gift.
Thank you, man.
Who you are, your being, what you bring to the world within yourself, and the way that you love, your open-heartedness has always been such an encouragement and an inspiration for me. You've always lived with that open-heartedness. And man, I'm just so honored to know you and to call you my friend.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
Awesome.
It's honestly been really beautiful to reconnect, and I receive you saying that because I'm in such a period of like this talk that I'm trying to put together has required of me to kind of look back and think about all these things and who am I, and even sobriety has asked me to figure out a little bit more of who I am and maybe stop obsessing over how I'm perceived, but at the same time learn a little more each day about like, no, I've kind of always been this guy or whatever, and so it's all helpful. It's all part of that learning for me, and learning is part of that growth, and thus it's part of the big picture of the meaning of why I'm here.
Absolutely.
So you saying that is helping contribute to that.
Well, it's absolutely true, man. And I absolutely love you, and I cannot wait to see you. Man, the ego is going to be doing its thing tonight, and that's the proper place for it, is on that stage, man.
Well, when you see it, just know that inside I'm actually fairly obsessed with trying not to let the ego. I'm actually it's juggling.
Yeah.
When I'm performing, I'm juggling of trying to stay in a sweet moment of purity. That's all I want.
Yeah.
It's okay if it's showy and it's extravagant and stuff, but I want my internals to be thinking about the audience and not thinking about me.
Yeah. And to go, this is a role I'm playing. That's not me. That doesn't define who I am.
Yeah, so moment to moment, I'm doing a little dance. In fact, I used to be so afraid. I'll leave it on this. I used to be so afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes were traumatic for me from an early age, man, with music. Yeah. And I'm telling you, not until I would say about a year ago.
Whoa.
I did the Kelly Clarkson show where we had, and The Voice, two different TV shows, musical TV shows, where we had just reams of music coming through.
And you mean you're the house band?
The house band, yeah. And every day I have X amount of opportunities to make a permanent mistake that lives on TV and the internet
on
for
YouTube
all
forever.
Time. Right?
Wow, it's terrifying.
So for me, it was like boot camp. It was great because I mostly didn't mess up, but I did mess up a lot, and I got to go through the pain and come out of the other side of making mistakes.
Love it.
And so I finally gotten to the place now where like I actually prefer now to have a mistake, preferably early in the set. Yeah. Preferably within the first song or first couple seconds.
Love that.
Because that way, like yesterday we started and I'm like, oh, I'm about to kill. And then I hadn't turned my bass on.
Oh, no.
So I didn't come in. And it helped set the tone for the night. I was free then to just have a pure night.
You're like, it's not going to be perfect.
It ain't going to, if that's what you're here to see, which no one cares.
Yeah.
But, if I was confused for a moment and thinking this is about me being great, it's not.
I think I saw some reel of you getting hit on the head with a giant butterfly.
I get the butterfly that Katy flies on. Occasionally we have a run in, and
I love it.
It's all so good. Part of that secret sauce. But a lot like my dad, man. Very concerned with trying to find to thread the needle and just come in pure for every show. That's all I care about now. I don't care how perfect it is or wasn't or any of that. I just want to be as pure as I can in that moment.
Be free. Yeah. Be free, man. I love that. Yeah, dude. I love you so much, man.
Love you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this, and I'll see you tonight at the show.
All right.
See you, brother.
All right. Thanks for listening, y'all.